Welcome, welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Michelle Hayward with Positive Hire and in partnership for Women's History Month. I am here with Noble Lee with System. System is a community of women of color in the water industry. So if you have not been tuning in for these series of conversations for leading women in water, and you're like, Michelle, I don't understand what you mean, like drinking water, cleaning, whatever it has to do with water, these women are all in there. Not foot, knees, whatever. But what I'm saying is they are professionals that actually manage different water systems throughout the United States. And tonight we have a very, very special guest who's going to be talking about forging new career paths. But I'm going to leave it to Noble to share with you who she is, and then we will bring up our special guest for tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. And hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Namble Lee. I'm out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm an environmental engineer with a focus in water and wastewater treatment, also a focus in PFAS removal. I'm so excited to be here tonight to not only focus on forging new career paths in water, but forging new career paths overall. Outside of the water industry, I love plants. That's just something that I do as a hobby on the side. And I also love spending a great amount of time with my family. Thank you.
Perfect. And with no further ado, here is our special guest for tonight joining us.
Hello,
Hello, Kathy. How are you this evening?
I am great and I'm glad to be here.
Yes, yes. So to start out, if you wanted to give like a tiny background tiny space of your humongous background and all of your accomplishments, just to introduce to the people today.
Sure, I'll keep it short though. So I am Kathy Bernardino Bailey. I am the executive director of Greater Cincinnati Waterworks, Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm on temporary assignment for 1 year with US EPA as a senior advisor to help them establish their lead service line replacement accelerators across the nation. So I've been with my utility for 31 years. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and I've been able to have a great career in it, and I really enjoy what I do, not only for Cincinnati, but in the industry.
Wow, that's amazing. So yeah, just to jump right into forging a new career and just focusing on the definition of forging means searching and looking for a new career. Over the span of your career, what do you think has been your motivation to keep reinventing yourself? And has this been intentional or just something that you fall into while gaining different skills?
So that's a great question. I think when I first started my career, it was not intentional at all. I just kind of went with the flow. So I started as a chemist. I was in a couple different positions. I was in IT. I did some strategic planning, all of that. But recent years, it's been very intentional in the steps that I've taken to maximize the opportunities that have been given to me because I've been thinking more about, at this point in my career, what else can I do? It's beyond me. How can I help others come into this industry? Help them on their career path, take the steps that they need to get going in their career in this male dominated industry. It's very challenging. And so I've been very intentional in not just my career, but in helping others at this point for me.
Yeah. What are some of those experiences that you say were really pivotal in making those changes, whether it's being mentored by others or simply just that grit and grind to do more and have more?
I would say it's been a few mentors for me. One was a mentor that I had many years ago, but he's like family to me. And it's interesting because in this industry, you're usually looking for a mentor that looks like you, and there's not many that look like us in this water utility industry. And so it's hard to find mentors sometimes, but for me, I've had a few mentors that have helped me, get on the right path, helped me make some decisions when I wanted to go from one step in my career path to another, and then just really be there as a support for me, as I made those steps.
Absolutely. And while making those steps, how important would you say your why is? when you're talking about flowing into those different career paths and kind of having a goal at the end, what was your why, and how important was that for you to be successful in changing careers?
Yeah. So early in my career, I didn't have a why. It was just pretty much let me do this job, let me get this check, let me keep it rolling, let me have some fun. I did not have that why. I had family, friends, and fun. Right. Not that I don't have that now, but I was living differently, if I put it that way. But now, I do have a why. I'm trying to figure out how I can have a positive impact, not just in my utility, but in my community, in my legacy that I leave, um, and what can I do to have that positive impact in my community and all that I'm trying to achieve. And so I do have a why, which then makes me act differently, walk differently, step in my career differently. And I'm happy about that because I really see myself as a servant leader trying to help others, along their path as well, but also to grow and do better in the community and leave it better than I found it for generations to come.
Absolutely. And leaving it better than you found it is one of the great benefits. But also outside of, I guess, gaining new skills and new experiences and higher levels, what do you say are the benefits of forging these new career paths, or something that you found?
Well, for me, it's always an opportunity to grow and learn something else, to meet new people, to be, you know, of assistance to other people. I think probably one of my greatest joys is really meeting a lot of the women who are now in this industry. Many people of color, women of color, but it just gives me all kinds of energy to make myself available to help them. And maybe they won't have some of the missteps that I had along my path, but I can give them some of the insight that I have or share some of my experiences through storytelling. But that is something that's helpful. And so I think it's an opportunity to grow and make yourself available, and as you grow, you learn new things, you experience new opportunities, and then from that, you can figure out how you can, take your next step along your career path.
I totally agree with that. And speaking of the women that you're now seeing, as a woman, myself, and I'm sure many others who want to forge new career paths, what do you say is sort of the mindset that one must have or should have, or you recommend to have, to be successful in that?
Oh, you need to be open, and
Mm.
you know as my mom would always tell me, you can do anything you put your mind to. And at the time it was like, oh mom, what are you talking about? But as I got an adult and thought about that, and now as I look back along my career, you can do anything that you put your mind to. And so, I think it's important that you are open to new opportunities. I started as a chemist. My degree is in chemistry, but I was in IT for a while. As I mentioned, strategic planning, performance metrics. I dabbled a little bit in utility mergers, performance metrics. I've had all kinds of stuff going on along my career in each one of the steps that I've taken to get to this point. And it's all been growth. It's been growth and new skills, and some skills that probably fit me better than others, but others at the time it might have been something I didn't like to do, but then later on in my next step maybe I needed that skill, and so then it became helpful and I appreciated it more. So I think growth and just the willing to change and be available and really know yourself, know that you can take these steps and put your mind and your energy behind it so that you can be successful in all the steps that you take.
Yes, and when you speak about like some of those steps and growing, we all know that growth can be challenging and not always fun. How do you say that? How do you feel you can stay grounded and focused when you're probably uncertain of your next career change? I'm sure forging isn't always this beautiful process. It can get very tricky.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't say it's beautiful at all. I think at times it's quite ugly. but I think if you keep your eye on where you're trying to go, or that you know that there's something that's great or good that's going to come from it, then I think that's what allows you to put your head down and keep going through it, right? Because we all know that you often have to go through some stuff, right, in order to get to the other side and have it be a good place to be in. And so I think growth and a lot of those, those steps along your career path, some of them aren't good steps, and you have to kind of sit down in it and it's not good for a while. But then you rise up to that next step and it's a good place to be. And then you appreciate, what you just came through. And so I think just having the right mentality and know again, I go back to knowing yourself, know how to talk to yourself and say, hey, this is just a matter of time that I have to go through this, but I know the next step is going to be better. It's going to be great because I'm going through this now and I can't be in this forever, and if you're a faith-based person, then of course that gets you through as well. But you just have to know yourself and be willing to go through some of that. That's not, the greatest that it can be, but know that that other side is going to be a good place and you're going to be better for it.
Yeah, that's so interesting, kind of knowing yourself and knowing where you are. I'm sure a lot of people have struggles at work and maybe they feel unfulfilled or just simply unhappy. It's not always, I believe, necessarily a change in career that you need. It could just be a change in job and maybe a glass of wine. So like, how do you distinguish, or how would you say you distinguish when it's either time for a new career versus time for a new job? Like, what is that turn point, that thing that lets you know, okay, it's time for a new career. It's not just my work.
Well, I mean, if you know yourself, then you know what challenges you, what motivates you, what gets you up in the morning and gets you excited for the day. You know those things. And so when that's not fulfilled, when you're getting up in the morning, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to do this again. And that's happening more times than not. Then you might know it's time. It's time for you to maybe do something different, or you're bored with what you got going on because maybe it's not challenging you as much. I remember some of those jobs that I landed in along my path, I went to my supervisor and said, you know what, this ain't it. This is not happening for me. It's like I can do this, in a couple hours and I'm bored. And what else is there? And what can I learn? And I remember one time in particular, I did that. And then he took me down this path of this was the CFO that I reported to. He took me down this path of teaching me all these spreadsheets and all this crap and oh my gosh, and all these pro formas and all this stuff that I didn't want to be bothered with. But in my mind, I was like, I asked for this, right? So I got to sit here. And I tell you, it was years later after we came out of an ugly merger that didn't work and the city manager separated the utilities back out. But we didn't have a financial officer. She had left. And so we were coming out of that merger into our own independent utility again. And everybody was saying, well, we don't know the financials. And for me, it was like, well, I know these spreadsheets and I know where they are. And I think if I can get us to those, we might be able to figure it out. And I go back to that often and think about it because at the moment, it was something that I didn't ask for. Well, I asked for something, right, that was a little more challenging, but I didn't like what he gave me.
Right.
But then later on, it was very helpful to me. And sometimes, we get in the way of ourselves and we don't let that new thing blossom, right? We don't let it grow because it's not what we really were asking for. And I think I would say, go with it and learn from it and know that everything that you're doing has a purpose and you're learning from it. And you might not see the purpose right then, but some point in the future, you will understand that and you will be able to use what you've learned. And that was definitely a case for me. So I think that's something that's important to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely agree with that as well. Kind of, it'll all work out in the end is sort of what I heard from that. Yeah. It might not be what you want, but it'll circle back. You'll use it sometime.
Yeah.
I did also want to touch on, this is something that I know people in my generation and even some in others are dealing with now, sort of like this hustle culture when it comes into forging those new career paths. And you feel like you constantly need to have maybe 2 or 3 different jobs. And if you're not growing by this time and that time, I was wondering, did you ever feel that pressure, or was it all very internal? Or do you feel that pressure to constantly, I need a new this, a new that, and constantly be growing and showing?
Well, I think as a black people, we always have a hustle, right? I mean, even when I was a chemist on the job, I actually years ago I used to own a bakery, right? And so I had that going. I'm an artist. I have art that I sell. So we all have a hustle, right? And that's something that we do. The challenge these days, though, that we have 2 or 3 hustles, but COVID has taught us that those hustles could actually be your full time job. And so we now see people that are making some career changes because their hustle has grown into way more, um, than just a side hustle. It's actually turning into be something that could be the full time gig that they want. And so, there's more opportunities there. And so I encourage people, because I don't want anybody to be on a job that they just aren't fulfilled in. And so I
Mm-hmm.
encourage people to be in tune with what they consider that their main job, but also pay attention to those side hustles because some of those are growing into to being the main jobs and could be very lucrative, not only for the person but for their family and their generations to come. And so it's this weird space to be in right now, but I like the weirdness of it because I think we are more in tune with what's important. I think we have, in many ways, simplified our lives, and I think we are trying to get to a better place with work. And if we get to a better place with work, it's a better work life balance, which is a win for our families and certainly, the Black culture, which is huge because we off for many years we haven't had a great work life culture because we've worked 2 3 jobs at a time. And if we can get to a place that offers something different and better, then I encourage people to explore all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely, like you're saying, a better work life balance. I think sometimes that's what hustle culture sort of, it makes you risk that. And even when thinking about those risks, what would you say are some of the risks of when you are forging a new career, whether that be taking a pay cut or I don't know, maybe hopping into something that isn't quite right for you? What would you say some of the risks maybe you've taken or experienced when forging your new careers?
Yeah, it's definitely some risks that come with it. There's risk in the job that I have now, where I'm temporary assignment with US EPA for 1 year as a senior advisor. And so there's risk. So I've left my comfortable executive director job, right? EPA has me on loan for a year, but after a year, there's an optional second year. I don't know if I'll take it. But then I come back to my utility. And so there's the risk of that not being what it was because somebody else has been running the utility. It's the risk that I come back to something very different that I don't like. Um, it's a risk that they won't be warm and fuzzy when I get back because I left them for a year or 2 years. So there's a lot of risk um, when you take some of these steps along your path. But I think you have to wrestle. I mean, you have to wrestle with what's important to you, right? And what your feelings are about it. And for me, I had to think about what was important to me. And it's important to me that across the nation, particularly in disadvantaged communities, that we get these lead service lines out sooner versus later, right? That's important to me. And so if I could take this 1 year assignment and have, a role in making that happen sooner versus later, then I thought that risk was worth taking. Um, some might think differently, but with every step along your path, if it's important enough, there's going to be some risk with it. And so you have to really, again, I come back to knowing yourself to know whether or not you're going to be comfortable with the risk. And then I always, I got the positive list and I got the negative list, and I'm going side by side to to look at it and say, is this worth it? Is it worth it or not? Is it worth it to me? Is it worth it to my family? Is it worth it to the organization that I represent? I do all of that, and I think it's important that people do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I really like how we keep touching back on knowing yourself and kind of, I would assume, being very confident in yourself and your abilities, and the fact that, like we said before, having the faith that it all will work out in the end. Was there ever a time maybe you can speak on where your confidence wasn't as strong as you would like it to be while attaining or going for a new career?
Yeah, yeah, I've had moments. I've definitely had moments. I right out of college, um, I worked for USCPA for 2 years, and then I came to the city. And a couple of weeks after being at the city job, my coworker said, "Hey, you were only hired because you're black, and we got in trouble because we didn't have any black people, and so now you're it, and that's the reason you're here." And number one, it's like, how in the world do you say that to somebody? But for me, that hit pretty hard because I had spent way more than 4 years getting the degree, right? And had put myself through college, 2 and 3 jobs at a time to get my degree. To have this confidence with this degree now, to come onto this job and have them tell me that, which basically said the fact that I had that degree didn't mean anything. And so my confidence wavered quite a bit with that. And for many years, it set me down a path to prove differently, that wasn't the reason why you hired me. But I got through all of that, and then my confidence has been, going up ever since then. And that's something that I try to work with, when I'm mentoring, particularly women and women of color. It's like, hey, trying to work on their confidence and let them know you got this. You walk in the room and the topic, you own the topic, and how can you build confidence? But you have to be very confident. And I've had more than one, I've had many moments where, your confidence does waver, but you have to figure out how to get back on track, and you get knocked back, but get yourself back moving forward. And again, I go back to knowing yourself, know what has happened, and then get yourself through that, talk yourself through it, understand what has happened, be honest with yourself so that you can realize what has happened that's knocked you off of your confidence trail, and then get back on it so you can keep moving.
Yeah, that's great advice also. And just speaking to your intersectionality of being both a woman and a Black woman, while forging those career paths, I know that obviously you've just expressed some challenges in that. Can you tell me about some of the benefits or the advantages you found?
Yeah. I think it's a huge advantage for me, um, to have had the experiences that I've had, and what when we're talking about people who are struggling to pay their bills, well, I've had that growing up as a child, and my family experienced that. When you talk about making decisions on whether or not you're going to have enough to pay a water bill or get medicine and some other stuff, I've experienced that. So I think in many ways my life experiences, um, although at the time when they weren't as pleasant as they could have been, they certainly have shaped me into being, a more compassionate leader that is very much in tune with the community and the subsections of the communities and the neighborhoods and the experiences that they have. And so I look at that as a positive, that those experiences might have been negative at the time, but they're positives now in how I can be a leader and what I bring to the table to be a leader.
Yeah, that's excellent. And in that leadership that you speak on as well, I was wondering if you found that maybe you give different advice depending on where different women are in their careers versus someone that is early on or someone that's a little further down the line. Because as you know, you can change careers or forge new career paths in any time in your life, whether in your mid 60s, early 20s, 30s, 40s, every decade you can really change. Do you think that your advice changes as maybe women approach different milestones?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Your advice definitely changes. As you change in your decades of years on this earth, you as you get more experience, as you go through quite a bit, you definitely change with that, and so I think your advice changes too, and your need for advice changes. I think early on in my career, I needed more advice on how to navigate, a male dominated industry, you know, and how to not survive but thrive in it, right? I needed to understand how to thrive. And so that then changed to, okay, I'm thriving, but now I need advice on how people will listen to me, and hear that I have something to say. So then I got that, and then it's like, okay, now I need advice on how to be more of an effective leader. I'm a leader, but I need to be an effective leader, right? And so needed advice in that way. And so I think you go through different phases as you take all these steps along your career path where the advice that you need and the advice that you give is very different.
Yeah, that's so interesting, and I think about that now mainly because as I turn 30, like you're saying, just how you think and how you feel, how you approach different career opportunities, from starting off where money is the goal, and then now you have an actual purpose and the why. All of that does change over time with those new careers. If you were to explain, I guess, your career path and all of the different, different trials and all the different roads you've taken, what was a word you would use to describe that?
Um, I'd say intentional. Intentional. Um, Early on in those first few years, not so much, but I had a couple instances, different things that happened early on that then made me very intentional in how I engaged and what I engaged with. And so I've been very intentional in opportunities, whether or not I take them or not. I've been very intentional in, what I wanted to put a stake in the ground for and what I would not waver on, different beliefs that I had. I've been very intentional in um, different projects and things that I wanted to do that had a legacy within the community, and so I'd say intentional is probably one that comes um, to mind, I guess. But I will say, with intentional, I now live in this space where I'm trying to inspire others to grow and go for different opportunities that might be before them.
Okay. And we are approaching that 6:30 mark, but just to end with everything, are there any final words you would say to encourage those who are considering a new career path and maybe don't have that confidence or question themselves? Just any final words to encourage and inspire them, like you just said, to keep
Well,
going?
well, I mean, we are resilient people. I mean, we've seen that over the years and everything that we've been through in this country, right? We are very resilient, and so I think I often look at it as an opportunity as why not? Why not take that next step? Why not put yourself out there, go out on a limb, try something different that you can grow from, learn from, and move on to the next thing from there. And so I would encourage people, go for it. Go for it. Do not sit back and be comfortable. Have courage, right? Over comfort, and get out there and try something new and different that will push you, energize you, motivate you, make you thrive and be more than you think you can be. Because I think sometimes we sit back and don't. This message came to me when I took this job, when I was not going to take the job. And I was just going to do it temporarily. I just thought, oh, I'll step in, but they'll find somebody, they'll do a national search, it won't be me. just a few months. And I was in church. And the message was all about we're given these God given talents, but we never fully use them, right? We never fully use them. We just kind of dabble at it, but we never fully use our talents. And that we need to step up and fully use our God given talents and make sure that we are living the most and the best that we can be, not only for ourselves, but everybody else. And the mess, it was as if I was the only one in the congregation that day, and that message just slapped me upside my head. And that next day, I applied for the job and got the job. But my point is, we often just get comfortable, and I say take the courage, get out of your comfort zone and go for it, and find something new that you can grow from and be innovative through that opportunity.
I love that. Was beautiful, and maybe maybe it was by God that message was given out here today. I love that, and it's definitely necessary. Kathy, I want to say thank you so much. This has been such an eventful and inspiring conversation. Something for everyone to take away. I love this. The sun has been
I
getting me.
know it's shifting on us, but we've been working it out.
The sun is showing off. I swear it's never been this bright. So it must just be for you. But thank you so much. This has been amazing. Thank you.
Michelle, we can't hear you.
Yeah, if I could come off of mute, it really worked very well. I want to say thank you to Nomble so much for taking the time to have this great conversation and inspire so many of us here. I'm a civil engineer. Y'all may not know this, but I did other things. I built the facilities they designed, right? And so I want to thank Nomble so much for interviewing you. We're going to switch over to the Q&A session, and Nicole, the founder of System, is going to facilitate that for us tonight. Over to you, Nicole.
Thanks, Michelle. I like everybody said already. I've been very excited about this session, Kathy. It's you and I had a special moment the day I met you, and I was like, I have to know the woman with that fro. I was like, that is my goal of this conference, and it gave me life, right? Because the energy that we put into each other is what was needed at that moment, because we don't see each other often, right? So I see you from across the room, and I can say I know you're there for me, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So I think there was a question on LinkedIn. Where did it go? There it is. Were there ever any career jumps you made that you regretted in hindsight? Maybe you wish you stayed a little longer or in a previous role, or tried something to get something else out of it. It's good.
There's one career jump I made, and I was, they give you all these weird titles, but I was the performance metric champion. And so I basically had to work with our 7 different divisions to figure out their performance metrics and then track them and report out them on a monthly basis to our director at the time. And we never figured out how to do performance metrics well in the organization. And I really felt like if I had more time in that before we just said forget it, that maybe I could have made something of it. And I wanted to learn more about performance metrics, right? And so I think that was a moment where I wish I had stayed longer. I think it would help me now, because I'm struggling now to get my division heads to realize the importance of performance metrics. But I think that one probably would have been one that I would point to.
It's interesting when you think about your career. There's nothing, in my opinion, even if whatever you learned for a reason, right? Like you were talking about earlier. So it's less about regret, but like you said, it's like I could have gleaned more from that experience. But performance metrics is just tough in general. I mean, every organization struggles with the wording, how they because you get different information from how you word things and all that. So that's and if that's not what you studied. Right. I don't even know where you would start. So I'm impressed that you did it. You pushed yourself, right, to try it and see what happens. So are there any other questions, Michelle? Oh, here we go. Have you been able to get yourself out of that comfort zone, and how have you been able to get yourself out of that comfort zone and take that risk?
You know, like I said, I didn't have this insight early on in my career. I was just trying to get a paycheck and survive. But I think in recent years, I have had, the vision that I want to be a positive change in the community. I want to make sure that I can do something that lifts people up out of their circumstances and puts them on, a better path moving forward. And so I think knowing that there's a lot of work in that space, um, that gets me out of my comfort zone to run after that, to see what I can do, at the utility, to help people with their bills, customer assistance programs, more water main replacement projects, remove the lead service lines, think about what we're going to do against PFAS, all of those things. I think because I want to have that, that lasting legacy in the community, that gets me out of my comfort zone because there's a lot of work in that space. Nicole, you're on mute.
Rookie move. I know some people have that confidence, out the gate, but I think it also comes with, like you said, experience, and saying like, okay, all right, I succeeded pretty well at that, right? What else can I do? And even though it doesn't necessarily mean it's less comfortable, but you're more prepared to take on the risk, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
it's just that you deal with that discomfort and you plow on it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions? Here we go. I love it. As your power and influence has grown in your organization and industry, how have you used it for change in the water industry? And I think, if, Kathy, before you even say what you think you've done, if no one is following Kathy on Instagram, not Instagram, Twitter, she's the first lady of water, and just her presence, she is unapologetically Black, and she is very clear about what she finds value in. And so I will say that that's a way that I've seen you use your power influence, just your presence, right? And just being willing to speak out on things and just be you. Because I think for so many of us, as we're coming up, we're like, I don't know how much of me I can be. They might not be able to take all of this. And so as someone else in the water industry that's watching you, that's what you have been a positive influence for me.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you very much for sharing that. But yeah, that's dead on. I what you see is what you get. I'm showing up every day. Bringing all of myself. All of my Blackness to the table. And in the industry, I call them on some of the craziness that they dish out, and tell them it's like that's not true. It's not going to fly. I'm not here to hear all that crap. Let's tell the truth, and so we have real conversations when I'm in the room and on the boards and attending conferences and at meetings. It's like, I'm not going to sit here and have you sugarcoat something because it's what you like to hear. It's like, we're going to get down to the real deal of what the truth is. And certainly I bring that to the table, in the industry.
It is refreshing, for sure. Now, I don't know how much more time we have. Do we have any more questions, Michelle? I don't know about anybody else, but I want to say that my word of the year has been intentional. So when you said that, it spoke directly to me, because I'm a planner by nature and all those things, but you have to say, this is what I'm going for. I'm very specific about it, right? Because things don't just happen. Well, things will happen without all that, but you have to be intentional with your goals and your desires. And I think that, we have watched you go through your steps and learned a lot from you and your intentionality, even when you weren't saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do. You just can see the determination, and it is it's a breath of fresh air for sure.
Well, thank you. Intentional is my word again this year. It's the only word that I've picked. Each year when I pick a word, it's the only word that I've come back to. But it's so strong in me to be very intentional in where I am in my space, because I've got 31 years in the industry, and so I'm trying to figure out what that looks like next. but very intentional in what I do and how I pour into others before I take that next step.
Well, we have Michelle's back, so she's telling us we don't have anything else. Any other questions? Great.
No more questions. I'm sad. I'm sad. But I did put your Twitter handle. Oh, I went and found your real. She on First Lady. Oh no, it's not the word because that's too long. It's the number. I already knew before I started typing. For those who know the Twitterverse, you're like, that's too long. So if you tweet too little, or you have pets that bark or meow, just go ahead and follow Kathy on Twitter. So now I got somebody else new. Like, ooh, what we talking about today? It's all the tech people over there talking tech. I'd be like, y'all can't do nothing without us.
Yeah. Well, we water folks have interesting things to say.
Yes, we do.
Yes,
we do.
I'm excited. Nicole, any final thoughts?
One,
I guess Kathy.
Well, yeah, I'll let Kathy go and then I'll close it up.
Yeah, I don't have any final thoughts. I just want to thank you for having me here tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly tell everyone, if you haven't seen the rest of our sessions, this has been hosted by Positive Hire with System, and System is a group of women of color in the water space, and it is a safe space for us to get together and talk about things and encourage each other, talk about opportunities, technical breakthroughs, all of these things, because we found that a safe space was needed, because we want to strengthen ourselves and then go out into the world and make this industry even better. And on one of those calls, we talked about having a word of the year, and Kathy brought that up. And I was like, that is a great idea, because I don't do resolutions, right? But I can have a word. Mm-hmm. And that word can forge me forward. And that little bit of inspiration has been, pivotal, right? So those are the kinds of things that we share with each other, and goals and dreams and all of that. So, if you'd like to join, and even if you want to be an ally, feel free to reach out to us, because we want to know that you're out there for us. That's one reason why we did this, right? So everyone can see and see the power that a group like this does. So thank you so much for joining. Hopefully you'll hear from us very soon. Everyone have a great evening.
See ya.
Thank you, everybody. And for those of you that follow us on LinkedIn, tomorrow we will be having at 1:00 Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific, we will have Jessica Walker on. It is Black Maternal Health Month. And so we know how Black women die often during childbirth. Young woman, 21, died delivering her only child at 21. So come join us. I have an advocate named Jessica Walker who has been in this space for over 20 years, talking about what the disparities are, but also what are solutions. So come join us. It will be on the Positive Hire company page on LinkedIn, as well as over on YouTube at Positive Hire Co. So we do all things not only for our intellectual being, but also on an individual level as we talk about our health and wellness as women, as Black women, as women of color. So everybody come over and join us. See you then. Thanks, Nicole. Thanks, Kathy.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, Michelle.